Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 3 steps to successful shadow work video. Thank you for being here. I'm super excited to talk about shadow work. It is my life's passion, and the transformations that it has enabled me to make in all areas of my life is just so amazing that it became something that I felt compelled to share with everyone else who feels the pull and the call to do their own inner work and transform all areas of their health and well-being. The inner work goes far, far, far beyond just our emotional health, our mental health and well-being, our stress levels. It affects our physical health, it affects our relationship health, our financial health, our relationships and career. I mean, it just goes on and on, whether those relationships are personal and, and intimate relationships or work relationships or family relationships. So when we talk about multidimensional wellness, that is really what we're referring to. Wellness in all areas of our lives. And the shadow work is the absolute necessity and foundation for actually shifting and bringing into balance all of those other areas of our life. So you can only go so far with, let's say, physical and dietary changes before you will continue to run into the blocks that triggered your old unhealthy habits. So shadow work is just so amazing and so powerful and absolutely necessary for anyone wanting to make any lasting and authentic changes in their lives. So I'm excited that you're here. So a little bit about shadow work. Shadow work is basically a fancy term for just doing inner work or soul growth. It's a term that I was introduced to originally when I began my training in Ayurveda. My Ayurvedic instructor introduced that term to me. And at that point, I was just completely fascinated with it and how powerful it was, especially after I saw how effective it was in transforming my life entirely. So it's just a fancy term. It can sound scary and intimidating, but it's actually nothing to fear. It deals with your fears, however, so it is a uncomfortable process. It is not easy work. It is basically diving into all of the areas in our subconscious that are rejected parts of ourselves that we've deemed either unwilling or unworthy, or unacceptable. It holds our beliefs, subconscious and conscious, our perceptions about others and ourselves, our prejudices, our biases, our wounds, and all of the beliefs that are basically holding us back from living the lives that we are wanting to live and the lives and futures we are wanting to create. I'm sure a lot of you can certainly relate to, how many times have you gone into a relationship and then it's going great and then there's a block and it seems like this is the same thing that keeps coming up over and over and over again in all of your relationships. So it leads you eventually to feel like, oh, I'm just not good at relationships. I'm never going to have a partner, things like that. And that's just not true. Those themes that keep popping up are designed to show you something. There is an area of you that is looking for some healing and acknowledgement so that you can have the relationships that you are wanting and do deserve to have. It can seem at times like these blocks are coming and they're working against you, but that is a misconception. Those blocks are actually the key to helping you get exactly what you want. So the first thing we want to do is realize the gifts of these issues and triggers and blocks for the gift that they actually are. Because as soon as you shift that perception, honestly, everything changes. And that shift is key. So let's start with the first of our 3 steps to successful shadow work. The first being identifying your triggers. This can be people who have an opposing political view. People in your family who, let's say, you think are rude and obnoxious, or people in your family that you feel are too reserved and they never speak up. It could be friends of yours that are constantly complaining about their relationships. It could be people that are constantly complaining about their weight, or it could be people that are vegan, or it could be people that are not vegan. Literally, there's infinite triggers out there, and everybody has their own set of them. So none of us are free from having these triggers. And we are kind of conditioned to project those triggers out onto other people and or we internalize them, and then that just kind of points it and directs it at ourself, which just drives our stuff more deeply into our shadow self. And that's not healthy either. We know from what science has been able to prove in recent years that our thoughts and our emotions are made up of energy, just like our physical body is, just like everything around us is. So that energy absolutely goes somewhere. It cannot be destroyed. We know that from physics. So it can only be transformed. If you are holding on to old wounds, if you feel like you're constantly biting your tongue and not speaking up about things that bother you, people crossing your boundaries, wounds, perceived slights or actual slights, all of that stuff, all of that energy is being stored somewhere in your body, and it's going to affect you on many levels. Oftentimes it manifests physically eventually when it's not dealt with, but it will also manifest outwardly, seemingly outwardly, in our relationships with other people. That is the number one most common way for our wounds to sort of be reflected back at us, is going to be through our relationships, because you can internalize something as much as you want to and try to pretend it's not there. But anytime you get into a relationship with someone, it's going to flare up because it's something that has to be dealt with and resolved. It is something that is not at balance and at peace within you. And so the way that this reality is kind of designed is it's going to try to show you, and it's always going to be through mirrors of other people. So our number one step in identifying those triggers is being aware of them and acknowledging them. We can't pretend like we don't have any triggers. Trying to spiritually bypass that we have triggers and we love everybody doesn't work either. You're just further ignoring your shadow and driving stuff deeper into your shadow. The only way to truly be at peace and whole within is by accepting all aspects of ourself, and that includes what's in our shadow. So let's say there's an aspect of you that you feel is unacceptable. So maybe it's that somebody growing up maybe told you that you talk too much. And so that became a belief somewhere along the way that you talk too much and that people don't want to hear what you have to say. And so over the years, you've learned to not speak up when you feel like you want to say something. That's going to hold you back in your relationships, and it's going to continue to be reflected back at you through your relationships, whether that's in the workspace, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your friends' relationships or your personal intimate relationships. That has to be resolved. It's not just going to go away. So in order to help you start doing that, just be aware of what those triggers are. And you can right now just write a list of like 10 or 20 of them if you want to, or there might be one that's coming up for you right now that is like just in your face. You're like, okay, this theme keeps coming up and up and up and up, and this is something obviously that's needing attention, and it's in my awareness right now, so let's deal with that trigger, and write that down. The identification of those triggers is going to be the very first key step in doing your shadow work and unpeeling the layers. That is basically kind of like an onion. You've got all of these layers piled up around some ultimate core wound or trauma of some kind. And it doesn't have to be trauma in the way that we kind of society thinks of trauma. It could be something traumatic, like being told as a child, like, shut up, you're being too loud. That creates a trauma. So be open-minded to what's there. And even though you might think that you let something go a long time ago, you'd be surprised that it probably still left an imprint. So just know that identifying the triggers is the first step in peeling back those layers to see what's there and what's really just trying to get your attention so that it can be healed and resolved within you, so that you can feel more at peace naturally and start living a more balanced existence. You know, we're not meant to be stressed out all the time and be constantly triggered by everything everyone else is doing, because it is actually never about anyone else or what they're doing or what they're saying. We are always, always, always here to look at how those triggers are actually pointing the finger back at us to heal something within us. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to go out in the world and not be triggered by everything and everyone around you? Yeah, it's a lot more peaceful that way. So identify those triggers. That'll help lead you to where you need to go. And everybody's path is going to be different, and that's okay. So you follow your intuition on where that path leads you. It could be leading you to learning how to meditate. It could be leading you to read a specific book. It could be leading you to, I really have had this class on my mind that I've loved and would always wanted to do and take a class in and become certified in maybe, but I never did it. Follow those intuitions, because those are trying to get you to where you are actually wanting to go. But the voice is very subtle. So you have to learn how to follow those subtle impulses, because that's your soul speaking to you. That's different than your mind telling you what you should be doing or somebody else telling you what you should be doing. This is a very subtle voice, and you have to learn to start listening to that. All of us do. Number 2, in our steps to shadow work, expect resistance. You are going to feel so much resistance when you begin doing your own shadow work. I'll give you an example. There's a tool that I love, which is a letter writing process, and it's very different from all of the letter writing processes out there that you've probably already heard of. It's pretty in depth, so I was reading the directions for it, and in reading the directions, I got super triggered and was like, there's a bunch of typos in this. This is totally disorganized. Who the hell wrote this? It doesn't make any sense. Why are they making it so confusing? I was just like going off and going off. And my roommate pointed out, wow, are you feeling a little resistance to doing the letter writing process? And that clicked. I was like, oh my God, yes. So I realized that even though consciously I was wanting to do this letter writing process to deal with forgiveness and putting at peace something that this person and I had going on for years and years and years, subconsciously there was an aspect of me that didn't want to do it, doesn't want to forgive this person, because that aspect of me believes that forgiving that person makes it okay for what they did, which is not true. And that's not the same thing as forgiveness. And that resistance is also kind of biological in the sense that it's your brain trying to keep you away from pain. Our brains are kind of conditioned to help us stay away from those things. So that's where that resistance is going to come from. And it'll probably come up in the form of some sort of distraction, like, oh, wait, first, before I do this, I need to go do the dishes, or I got to go do the laundry, or I got to go pick up my kids, or whatever the case may be. Your mind will literally come up with a million logical, totally rational reasons why you have other things to do other than this thing. Don't listen to that, though. Know that that's resistance, and you just have to have the discipline to push through that, because it's going to take a lot of discipline, to be honest. This work is definitely not easy, and that's why most people won't do it. But the benefits and rewards that you will see in every single area of your life are really beyond even description. It's the most wonderful, powerful thing you could ever do for yourself and for your family and for the world around you. If we ever, as a human collective are going to change our world, it is never going to come from other people changing what they're doing based on our opinion about what they should be doing. It is only going to come from within, because the less we judge ourselves, the less we're projecting those judgments on other people and creating more conflict. So do the work, have the discipline, develop the discipline. It's not something that is easy, and just know that going in, but you will reap incredible benefits from it. So keep going. Number 3, we use our tools. The tools in your tool belt that you can gather for doing shadow work are of immeasurable benefit. There are literally millions of tools. There's a million paths up the mountain, and everybody's path is going to be different and unique. And that's the beautiful thing about it. You don't have to follow a certain cookie cutter set of rules. And actually, it wouldn't work for everybody. Every soul is here to learn different lessons. They're here to overcome certain challenges, and they learn in different ways. And there are different experiences that are going to yield them exactly what they need. So these tools that I will give to you are just some of the tools that I use. They're some of the most powerful ones, because I find myself going back to these 3 very consistently. But there's many other tools out there. So follow that too. If there's a specific practitioner that speaks to you in a way that you just get it, it clicks, work with that practitioner. Follow your intuition. If there's a book that you've been drawn to, read the book. And sometimes that you might get through half of the book and then find you're not actually drawn to the book anymore. You got whatever you needed out of that. That's okay too. Don't beat yourself up over the preconceived notion that everything that you begin, you have to finish. For some of us here, myself included, finishing things is part of our lesson, but you have to have the discernment to know which of those things are something that we actually do and that's important for us to finish versus our ego, logical mind, and society telling us, well, you have to do it this way, and if you don't, then you're a failure. Let go of all of that stuff. So listen to your intuition, trust your intuition. Ask your guides, ask God or Buddha or whoever you feel drawn to ask for help with this process. Ask for that help because that help is there for you. Ultimately, you will find that all of the answers that you are seeking are all within you, every single one of us. We just have kind of lost touch with how to access that inner knowing, that little voice. And it is a subtle voice. So I'll give you an example. That thought that you have in your head, let's say you're driving home from work maybe, and you have this random fleeting thought like, maybe I should just go that way today. And then you ignore it, and then it turns out you're stuck in traffic because there was an accident, 50 cars ahead of you or whatever. That little voice, it's very subtle, but that is going to be the subtle voice of intuition to listen to. And it will always have a peaceful feeling to it. It's never going to be like telling you what to do. It's not forceful. It's your inner guidance, and it's gentle and compassionate, and that's why it's so subtle. So just learn to kind of cultivate the awareness of that little voice and start listening to it. But your guidance will come through in many ways. It could be a fleeting thought. It actually could be a song on the radio at the specific time you needed to hear it. It could be a specific phrase in a movie that you're watching that resonates so deeply for you that it triggers an emotional response. Pay attention to those signs because they're always there trying to help guide you to exactly what you are searching for and seeking to do for yourself. But where we kind of lose awareness is that we expect it to come in a certain way, and it almost never comes in that way. So know that if you are asking for more patience, you are actually going to get stuck behind every slow ass driver and hit every red light for days at a time. Because guess what? In order to cultivate patience, you're going to be given the opposite of that as it's working its way out and cultivating that for you. So oftentimes, whatever you're asking for, you're going to notice the exact opposite coming up for you. And that's just because it's trying to make space. You cannot cultivate patience and bring in patience when you have a cup full of impatience. There's just no room for it. So expect your insights and guidance to come in ways that you're not going to expect, because 99% of the time it's not going to come in a way that you expect. Number 3, use your tools. The first and foremost, most important and powerful tool you can use is just always asking the simple question, how is this situation a mirror for me? Or how is this situation an opportunity for growth for me? Our triggers are very different from just things that we don't really have an emotional reaction to. For example, if you can sit in, actually I'll give you an example from our meetup group we had. If there's topics that come up that, some of it resonates for you, you're like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then somebody says something that you're like, doesn't really resonate. All right, whatever. You would throw it to the side. If it triggers you, however, you will have this intense response and reaction to it and be very opinionated about it and want to argue with the person about it. Probably not consciously, but it will trigger an emotional reaction for you. That's when you know it's a trigger versus just a truth. It's not my truth maybe that, organized religion, I don't know, has all the answers, let's say, because they certainly don't. But it's different from a trigger let's say somebody is talking about their religion and I'm feeling like, oh my God, no, this person's wrong and I need to prove to them they're wrong and how stupid they are. That's different. That's a trigger. If it just doesn't resonate for you, you let it go. But if it's a trigger, it's going to elicit an emotional response for you. And all of us are responsible for our reactions, just as we are responsible for our actions and thoughts towards others, and ourselves for that matter. So we're responsible not only for our thoughts, deeds, words, and actions, but also our reactions. And that is something that we're kind of blind to. Nobody really thinks about being responsible for their reactions. Nobody else is ever responsible for your reaction to something. Not ever. As much as we want them to be, as much as our logical side kind of tells us we're right about, It is never about the other person. It is always about you. So we need to start looking at ourselves whenever something comes up that triggers us, because other people don't have to live the way that we think they should be living. That's ridiculous. Everyone is here to have a different experience and live their lives with peace and compassion, just like we want in our lives, and respect. So do the work. We cannot change our world by telling other people what they should be doing and how to live. We only can change our world by doing it individually and healing our own issues and wounds and triggers. That is the only way we will see global shifting, is if everyone is doing this work. And if everyone doesn't do this work, doesn't matter. You on some level know better. There are souls here on this planet that especially know the truth of what I'm saying, and this will resonate deeply for you. There are some of us that just sort of know better. And so we are held to a higher standard. And so we need to do this work because we do know better and we're capable of doing it. We don't need to convince other people to do it because maybe they're here to have a different experience. But those of us who have the knowing and that inner feeling and awareness, it's our responsibility to utilize that. If we really want to create peace in the world, it starts with being at peace with ourselves and our surroundings. So do the shadow work, because it's going to bring you even more than you could ever imagine. I promise you. As hard as it is, it will yield the best rewards. So have somebody that can help you through this process. Sometimes it can be very difficult. And there will be certain people and practitioners that can help guide you, and you follow your instinct as to who those people are to help you. But nobody can ever actually do the work for you. So just begin the journey and be excited about where it leads you. It's going to have some uncomfortable emotional bumps along the way, but it'll be worth it, and you will feel much more whole and like yourself, like you have not in decades and decades and decades. So I thank you for listening to the video, and I'm excited to hear about anyone's experience with this. Feel free to email me, give me feedback. I love to hear what everybody's going through. It usually tends to be similar things as to what I'm dealing with in my personal shadow work stuff. So email me, Janine at urban-alchemy.org. Have a great day.